President, as I begin the update, let me begin by expressing my thanks to you for the extraordinary opportunity I've had this past year of participating in the area committee. This will be my last update, and it's been a great blessing for me. Thank you for the opportunity.
We'll expect you to stay updated.
We'll do our best. Today's presentation, Kurds, the nation without a country. When the Assyrian king Daniel was asked by King Belshazzar to interpret the writing on the wall, he told the king that because of his wickedness, the Assyrian nation would be overrun, that Belshazzar would be defeated, and the kingdom would be given to the Medes and the Persians. The Medes are an ancient people occupying the area across Central Asia today that we know as northwestern Iran, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. They were mentioned by Ezra, Jeremiah, and Isaiah. Although the Medes began their rise to power in the 7th century, Cyaxares the Great is seen as the first great Median ruler, governing from 605 to 585. Today's modern-day Kurds consider Cyaxares to be the father of their nation and people, the Kurdish people. King Cyaxares' empire, which you can see here in yellow, covered the area that we've described previously. The capital city, you can see in the red dot in the center, Ekbatana, was located midway between Baghdad and Tehran. The Medes practiced a religion called Mazdaism or Zoroastrianism, focused on a fight between good and evil, and had a priesthood which was especially focused on reading the signs in the heavens. They were known as the Magi. The Median Empire was overthrown by Cyrus the Great in 550 BC, and the power of the Medes ebbed and flowed throughout the centuries that followed. As we move into the Middle Ages, the Medes became more known as the Kurds, the different tribes that assembled. It evolved from being Medes to Kurds, and the Kurds were then conquered by the Arabs. Islam was imposed in the 9th century AD, but the Kurds reemerged politically and militarily during the 10th through the 14th centuries. The most famous of the Kurd kings was a man named Saladin, who conquered western Turkey, Syria, and Egypt, and drove the Crusaders from Jerusalem in 1187 AD. After the 14th century, Kurdish power went into decline, and they lived for several hundred years with varying degrees of autonomy under the yoke of the Ottoman rulers. At the end of World War II, the victorious Allies divided up the territory of the Ottoman Empire among themselves, creating the boundaries of today's modern Middle East states. This was done in a treaty negotiated called the Treaty of Sevres in 1920. The Treaty of Sevres contemplated the creation of an independent Kurdish state, Kurdistan. The proposed boundaries covered much of what had been their traditional homeland. But that treaty was not accepted by the new rulers in Turkey, and eventually a second treaty was negotiated in 1923, which created today's political boundaries, and the Kurds were left as a nation without a country. You can see how they fit in the modern day map. As we look at where the Kurds are and what their population is, there's about 38 million worldwide. They make up 23% of Iraq, 10% of Iran, 9% of Syria, and 25% of Turkey. The Turks don't acknowledge that the Kurds exist. They call them Mountain Turks. And there's been a long going battle between them and the Turkish government. There's also a large diaspora in Europe, about 1.3 million Kurds, and about 500,000 in the United States. So there's a population, 38 million worldwide, a nation the size of Poland with no country. Despite being separated by political boundaries, the Kurds have remained a cohesive community with a distinctive identity. They've been consistently engaged in efforts to gain their independence and to have an independent country by political and sometimes military means. These efforts have been repeatedly and at times brutally suppressed by Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. The Kurds speak an Iranian dialect and have diverse religious connections, including Sunni Muslims, Christians, and some remnants of Zoroastrianism. Culturally, they are much more liberal than others in the Middle East. Women and men can dance together. Women are not required to cover their heads. In 1991, the efforts of the Kurds to gain an independent nation gained some traction. President Bush established a no-fly zone in response to Saddam Hussein's brutal repression of the Kurds, including the use of nerve gas. The Kurds of northern Iraq seized the opportunity to establish a relatively autonomous government. For that reason, they love Bush and they love the United States. After the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, the Kurds, with U.S. support, were able to negotiate the establishment of a semi-independent status under the new Iraqi constitution. The Kurdish area, known as the Kurdish Regional Government, has its own laws, security, and foreign relations. It has been the most stable and safest part of Iraq since the U.S. invasion. The current president of Iraq is a Kurd, Jalai Talibani, as is the president of the KRG. Kurdish northern Iraq has become even more important with the emergence of the Arab Spring and the departure of U.S. troops. The day after U.S. troops left Iraq, the Prime Minister attempted to arrest the Sunni vice president of the country on charges of terrorism. He fled to northern Iraq to the Kurdish Autonomous Region for safety and protection, the same thing that many Christians have done over the past 8 years. Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria all worry that the Kurds will use the potential combined chaos of Iraq's transition, the Arab Spring, and a possible strike on Iran to attempt again to establish an independent Kurdish country. The Kurds are one of the many wild cards still on the table during these turbulent times in the Middle East. Despite or in spite of the chaos, the gospel continues to roll forth as foreseen by Daniel. The descendants of the ancient Median kingdom and the kingdom of the restored gospel are finding and embracing each other. One of these is Sister Kajal Rahmani, a prominent Kurd and a convert to the church with the assistance of Brother Clayton Christensen. She's a professor of anthropology who's taught at Harvard, Boston College, among others, and continues to build academic and humanitarian bridges between the church and the Kurds. There are also some families of the church living in the Kurdish Autonomous Region of Iraq. The writing is truly on the wall. Despite the political challenges of the day, the gospel will one day reach these ancient people, and the kingdom of God and the ancient kingdom will grow together and among them again. That's today's update. Comments or questions?
Could we have Brother Christensen comment on his relationships to the woman mentioned?
He was instrumental in helping her accept the gospel. She had converted to Christianity from Islam at the time she was teaching at Harvard, and he met her and he began to explain some questions about life, and she became interested in the gospel.
Is he here today?
No, he's not.
She's a member of the church.
She is a member of the church, dedicated and committed to the gospel and to her people.
Interesting. Question, brother?
Very good, very interesting.
Thank you.
Clint?
Yeah, Paul. Particularly in Iraq, but in the other areas there, are there huge pockets of non-Kurdish population? I mean, do they, in the areas where you show them, are they pretty dominant, or are they have a lot of people interspersed with them that are not Kurds?
There are places where they're very dominant. Some of the places where you see violence in northern Iraq, Kirkuk, for instance, is where there's a fight for political domination between Sunnis and the Kurds, or that's usually the conflict. But there are places where there's absolute dominance and where they really control Suleimania and places like that.
Thank you.
They're Muslims?
They have some Muslims and they have some Christians. In Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan in northern Iraq, there's a place where there's over 60,000 Christians and many ancient Christians. Those are Christians who are Coptic Christian, or not Coptic, but they're Syriac, and still use Aramaic in their masses in some parts of.
Bruce, you were shaking your head like you could answer that question.
About the religion?
Yes, or anything.
Well, we have. I was thinking earlier, that may have been when I shook my head. Interesting enough, we've had a family living in Kurdistan, in the Kurdish Republic, from Huntsville, Utah. A family with how many children, Paul?
Nine children.
9 children. And they've lived there for about 3 years in perfect peace. They're known to be Latter-day Saints. They've had no problems. It's just a very stable part of Iraq, a safe part of Iraq. We've considered and have been asked by this sister Kajal to do more there. And the only hesitancy we've had is that anything we do in Kurdistan will be viewed very negatively by the Turks. And we're moving into Turkey, so it kind of puts us in a little bit of a dilemma. One place we might, as Paul was speaking, I thought one place we might look at is the diaspora and trying to locate Kurds in the United States and in Europe and begin to teach them. I think it's a fertile ground that the time's come to look at.
Any comments or questions, brethren?
It's fascinating.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.